Good day, this is John from Dambest Racing Carburetor. We're going to review the 4500 series Dambest billet carbs. I've also added some other little items in there, some pro stock changeovers that we had done. And this particular video is going to be a little bit more random in how I present the pictures. We're looking at a pair of earlier billet main body 4500 pair. If you notice, it still has the cast float balls on it, so this particular pair may be 10, 12 years old. I'm looking over the features on it. When we first came out with the 4500 series carburetor, which we'll show you later, it had a 5/8 radius, the same as our 4150s. But we noticed real early in the production of the carbs that we could make a little bit more airflow if we just relaxed the radius a little bit more, so we had converted it over to a 1-inch radius. At that time, as you can see in these pictures here, we also did a raised air cleaner lip. This is the original height, and a lot of manufacturers is almost laughable. We found out that even if we raised the air cleaner height, and we called it the Gen 2, the dropped air cleaner is a Gen 3, which you're looking at now is what we call Gen 3. This particular pair has the airfoil boosters, so they're not quite as old as the other ones, because we didn't have the airfoil in the beginning. That came about through a enlarged skirted booster, and then we changed it over to an airfoil booster maybe a year after its original production. They increased the signal and decreased the drag, because our regular skirted boosters were inserted from the bottom, so they had a flat space on the top. So what we're trying to do now, even though these things aren't cheap, each booster assembly is about $75 my cost. But when I'm looking at the production of the carbs, I'm not worried about what the cost is, only the performance. Now, this particular pair had Demon float balls on it, and the fact that we use a changeable base plate like the Demons, occasionally we could sneak these in where Demons were legal and the Dambest weren't legal yet. So we made them look like that. Now, this particular set, anodized black, the earlier ones a lot of times were polished, because we have a tumbler, which we said in the 4150s, and based on how soon someone needed it, we would throw them in the tumbler and polish them, and they were beautiful. They were very nice. The ones with the Demon, we put their Demon float balls on, and you couldn't even tell. They weren't of the same production. This particular set here that we're looking at, I actually think went to England on that manifold. And it has our first billet float balls on it. So I'm looking at these pictures. I collected the pictures over the years, and yesterday I put the photos together, and I didn't put them in the exact order. The last one just had the very first billet float balls on it. Now this one here is a production billet float balls, earlier style, because I can tell because it has the screw-in window. Now we use the glass with the lock ring and do it during the CNC process, but my CNC skills weren't that good in the beginning. We also do threaded. I learned how to program the threads. This is once again that earlier set where the float balls aren't anodized, and they were pretty beautiful at the time. And you can see it has the airfoil boosters, and the airfoil boosters from customers that we're doing, we went from the skirted booster to the airfoil, and it was almost a solid 25 horsepower within the same carbs, which already were good performers at the time. There's such a difference in the fuel distribution in the single and the airfoil booster that anywhere they can fit. You got to remember, there's always a compromise between throttle tip-in area and the booster signal. Sometimes a smaller throttle bore will allow you to get on the main booster sooner, so it performs better, even if it's not the best style booster. If size wasn't a matter, we would make the carburetors bigger and use rocket nozzles. I mean, but at some point, the trip-in is where the problem is. You know, exposing the throttle area at low engine speeds. So you can only, do so much with each item. These are fully anodized black. These are earlier ones that had the screw-in windows, and the ones that are showing on the screen right now are lock ring sight windows. Still has the Holly style linkage on it. So I'm guessing these particular carbs are probably 4 years old. Our newest linkage is completely changed. You'll see some carbs with the newer linkage. In fact, let's see here, I'm looking at this picture. And this is a set that has the shear plates for tunnel ram, and we also make the gaskets in-house. So if someone buys the carburetor shear plates, I throw in the gaskets just because it seems like a normal thing to do. You know, if somebody's making that much investment, and there's no sense of beating them up on the gaskets, so we just offer that as a combination. And our current logo is put in with a laser now, because the same laser that cuts the gaskets we use for doing the logos on the float bowls. And we put the logo on some other carburetors in different places, but it's really an attractive way to do the logo. The metering blocks mostly are done with the CNC. Now this carburetor is one of the earlier 4500s. If you look at the booster, I want you to focus on that. That's the earlier skirted booster. If you look at the top where the insert and the banjo meet, it's a flatter surface. That's one of the things that we're trying to get away from. No sense of adding drag when it's not necessary. That flat surface causes drag. So, a lot of things that we do, we change over time. Originally, we used either the Braswell float bowls or Quick Fuel. Eventually, we started buying Quick Fuel in quantity. We got a better price. The linkage there, we had bought too. We were making the main bodies, and we didn't even make our metering blocks in their earlier days. We did put the patented surfaces in. So I'd buy a metering block, and then I'd end up having to do all the patented services in it after I got the finished metering block, because I was so busy making main housings, or in the early part, I had them made out of house. I didn't even make the main bodies. We didn't in-house make anything. So we were assembling. And what most people don't realize is when you're not running CNC machines or fixing them or doing anything else, there's a lot more time to do marketing. So in the earlier time, when you're seeing these carbs now, I was just doing the assembly like a lot of the people are doing now. They buy the parts from different people and they send them. I actually had more time to do the marketing. Now, with bringing all the CNC and creation in-house, gosh, I'm in time deficit. Having CNCs and lasers and 3D printing and all that, is not only learning how to program the machines, because if you look at the linkage, there's a pretty standard linkage now that we all bought. I used to buy it. Now all that's done in-house. Shafts and linkage, because we wanted to move forward and be able to change things. I would say everything in the pictures now was, even though it was my design, was not made in-house. So in order to get control of the manufacturing, we had to get CNCs and learn how to program them. This is taking that carburetor and putting it on the wet bench. We have a pretty elaborate wet bench, and has 2 computer systems on it, and it really is the bedrock of making all the performance. We can take something that never existed before, and I mean truly, when you get the splits or some of these carburetors we never made before, put it on there, tune it right in, and it'll go out and set a record or win a race the first time out. Happens hundreds of times. We did a set of carburetors, a set of splits for customer, and first full race out, he won the JEG Nationals. It's just all the time. It's just a normal thing. This also has the earlier booster in it. You can see by the older style linkage. Many people run that linkage now, but we have our own, which is more adjustable and smoother. And same thing with all the other aspects. Here's another picture. That's why I say the pictures are put in random, so we could see with the earlier skirted boosters. These boosters are used in the 4150 style. They're also used in the 1.75". We go down as small as the 1.75" butterfly 4500 for the guys that make less power and have those kind of manifolds. So that gets used there. So we wanted you to see what the earlier skirted booster worked with, and they were phenomenally performing. It isn't like that carburetor came out. When it came out, it was still leaps and bounds ahead of the modified Hollies that were out and about that we had even done because of the repositioned Venturi, the signal, the patented stuff that we were doing in the metering blocks, and our system. This one has the hour linkage on it. The last one, this one shows the previous linkage, the purchase linkage. Still with the skirted boosters in it. I can tell from looking at these metering blocks, these are modified, not produced in our house metering blocks like everybody was doing before and they're doing now. They put the logo on it. You may do your tricks on inside the metering block. Here is a set of carbs that got the airfoil. I'm looking at the linkage even though it's a bad angle. It looks like our linkage on this. Still using the quick fuel metering float bowls, I'm sorry. So there's a lot going on. Between producing different sizes, we currently go from the 1.75" up to 2.5. I have to add the pictures at the 2.5. I'll do that before I end this video. This is our linkage. We have it laser cut, and I keep modifying that. Even I'm currently having a new inventory of linkage cut that I've upgraded the slots to give it more progression. We find when we get the bigger throttle bores, they actually need a little bit more progression. So here's the polished main body, the newer linkage, not the most current, because most current isn't even, we're not even using it yet, with more progression. These metering blocks were made in-house. I can look at it by the logos. If they were engraved in the machine, they're made in-house. We did do some laser ones in-house, but most of them are engraved right in the process of making the metering blocks later after they're anodized. I just stick them back in the machine and hit the button, and it goes in and engraves the metering blocks. And there's a good picture of the linkage. This is our linkage design. Maybe through one or two evolutions back in the beginning. We also, if you look at the boosters, we did a few sets that had anodized inserts where we actually took the two aluminum pieces. There's a bottom piece and a top piece in the airfoil. It's a 3-piece booster assembly. That's what makes it so expensive. We're trying to get rid of the flat on the top along with changing the interior shape to give it the same amount of air, would have less drag. In an airplane it would be more lift, but in this case the lip produces the booster signal and gives it more lift, so more draw. So you're getting less drag and more draw. And so we just keep moving forward. You can get your choices. Most of the 4500s now, other than the 1.75", are black. We do offer the 1.75" in both. That when you see the occasional 4500 like this one that's in a different color, there is some customers that purchase the carburetors in a long time that we can make them either polished or a different color. They'll pay to get it stripped and get it made their color, which we can, our anodizer will strip them and then make them another color if you so want that way. This has got the newer linkage, the main bodies. You still got the skirted boosters inside of it. Metering blocks were done here. I can tell by the logo once again. And these are the cast quick fill float bowls that we had used for a bit. You can see the skirted booster here. Just got to remember, these perform better than anything that was out there. The airfoil booster is above this. So even if we didn't have the airfoil booster, our standard carburetor setup, because we used the banjo stainless steel, the ID of the banjo is 250, so there's plenty of fuel there. Coming through the fuel system. I look at these carburetors. We get them in the wet flow. I just float a set of Hollies, and they're on supposed to be on a 1400 horsepower. They did, the Holly main body didn't flow enough fuel through it to support 1400 horsepower pair. That's a pair carb. So one didn't support 750. So the wet bench allows me to know that. So when people are out there doing things, and they say they'll move methanol and stuff, I don't see how they can do it. Carburetor capacity isn't large enough. The passageways and things. And this is black anodized. So in case somebody is building a lot of methanol engines, we might anodize the boosters inserts at some point to help feed them. This is an earlier set of the billet float bowls, our metering blocks, our linkage, our everything. This has airfoil boosters in it, and we're just showing some of the earlier float bowls. These are the screw-in windows, because it's only on one side, so I can tell it's one of the early production, maybe just put on there for picture purposes. And we wanted to get some changes made in there, so we used the cap, as described in the 4150s. Get 360 fuel delivery. If you look at the cap, around the needle and seat, there's a cavity, so no matter which direction the needle and seat is turned, you'll get 100% of the fuel going through. Same thing below the needle and seat. In the capacitor, we have some YouTube videos that show that really well in the fuel delivery. This has the screw-in sight windows. So this is probably 8 years old at the time. We currently use our own linkage. We got away from the Holley style linkage, whether it be the steel linkage or even the plastic linkage, because the spring, people want the accelerator pump to work when they go up to the starting line. Some of the stuff, spontaneously. Well, the resistance in the fuel delivery system will compress the springs, so they're not getting the instant throttle response they need on some of these really big motors. So we've moved away from adding a spring to the accelerator pump arm. And this is probably something getting ready to be shipped. It's got the glass in it. Carburetor's ready. Got the cap. I can see the fuel deliveries on the other side. So this has got all of our components. These float balls are made here. Everything in this picture is made in-house. Yep. So we're looking at, same carb, different color, anodized float balls, still screwed-in windows. This still has the earlier linkage on it. We use the heavier Holley style linkage sometimes because the people want the throttle to keep up with their foot. So the other linkage had a softer spring in it, so you'd have to shim the spring. People don't realize how much is going in. Now this is our high flow carb. It's another booster insert altogether, complete different booster assembly. We got into doing methanol and single carburetor, and it needed more capacity to move as much as 2,000 horsepower of methanol. So it needed a dual needle and seat. It needed a new metering block, completely new metering block with more capacity to flow fuel through it. Back again to our more current float bowls with the snap ring windows. All metering blocks at this point are made in-house. We have maybe 6 or 7 different style metering blocks for different things. We're going to fix our website to show all those different things. This is still showing the non-DAM linkage. So depending on what the usage, you'll see the linkage, the accelerator pump linkage change a little bit here and there. But the basic 4500s are hovering around airfoil booster, whether it be pro stock metering block or the newest one is our V blocks. We're going to be doing a whole video, in fact, maybe fairly soon, just on the metering blocks, because I have all of those pictures ready. And so you're looking at the linkage. We're getting the linkages, like if you look at the secondary little shaft linkage, it's a little bit smaller than previously. We've moved the ratios in the primary and secondary so that it'd be either softer or more aggressive. The newest ones will even have more progression for those that need it. So there's so much going on a daily basis. All carburetors are wet flowed. Whether depending on the fuel we set it up. So it's usually pretty close, within a jet or so. If it's off more than that, there's usually something going on that we weren't told. There's something in the previous assembly that somebody had to compromise. We just redid a set of carburetors, the earlier Hollies, that we wet flowed the replacement carburetor was at 17.9 air-fuel ratio. The customer wanted us to adapt to that. So something's going on that his assembly is set up for a extremely lean. Most people don't measure the air-fuel going in, and it's extremely lean condition. But we can do that. We can change it. So these carburetors have all the newest features, except the linkage. I mean, the accelerator pump linkage. Snap rings, airfoil. If you notice, it doesn't have accelerator pump squirters. This is one of the first ones that had the parting line squirters. I want to draw your attention to that. It doesn't have accelerator pump squirters on top, so the parting line is there. So this is a fairly new design. Now this one goes back and has the accelerator pump squirters back on top. So it's new old stock, but we want you to see the secondary bracket. So we use that primarily on supercharged engines, because the supercharged engine has a lot of vacuum created by the supercharger. So we have that bracket. Plus, on the bigger throttle bores, we're adding that bracket so that they have something that helps with the closing of the spring. You can add a spring. Now, these are Braswell Pro Stock carbs that we put our shear boosters in. Like I say, I wanted to show a couple of things. People, don't realize that we had done before building our own carbs. We basically, like everybody else, modified others using our patented science shear boosters. Go inside their metering blocks, add our patented shearing in their metering blocks, and man, we did, literally hundreds of sets. We still do some. This is a set of comp that somebody had sent in, Braswell carbs that we put the shear booster in. Then you can see if you look at the Braswell banjo, you'll see the top has a different style. Then at the bottom we do all the machine work for the shear. We just threw this picture in so that people know that we also have the E-Jet, electronic jet, for our carburetors, which you run with the metering block. So it's a fully carbureted, and you're just basically using the injector as an electronic jet. That helps with G-force. A lot of G-force is going on. Tires have gotten better, cars have gotten better, and some of these cars will easily eat 3.5 Gs. Normal float bowls just won't deal with that. Here's a set of modified Hollies using one of our billet inserts, and you can see our metering blocks are in it. So they probably is a Pro Stock, so it had Pro Stock metering blocks. Jets it towards the aft. So somebody will send something that's they purchased, it's not working for them, and we go in and stick our systems in as we used to do before we made our own carbs. And they are, outstanding performers, setting records, winning races, putting our systems in there. This is when Holly was starting to copy our aesthetics. They, started making their carburetors black because we were black. They got rid of the ribs and stuff on the top. They're not where the booster is above the Venturi, but they tried to give it a similar soft appearance. And now this next carburetors are ones that we got NHRA approval. Dambest is now approved in econo classes in comp, soon to be hopefully accepted in super stock. We're working on that kind of as we speak. So the logos that are done, that was the things that we had to do for the NHRA approval, is to laser our logo and the carburetor size in the top of the hat so they could walk over and see which carburetors it is and then measure it. So we kept it simple. So all of the NHRA legal carbs have special features to meet with the NHRA requirements. So we have a full line of, you can run any of our stuff in Altered or Top Sportsman, Top Dragster, but when you get into comp, especially the econo classes, that we have NHRA accepted carbs, then they have to have the laser approved numbers on them, both on the top and other places. And they have different internal features, so the carburetors are sold with any option available depending on how they're being used. Here's another one. We did each of the different sizes. If you were noticing, each of the different sizes on the top of the hat, that we call that the hat. So all the parts in these carbs are now, made in-house. They have turned out to be a very beautiful thing. And here's a set of carbs that, once again, I put here, that some places where demons were allowed, we made them like demon lookalikes. And I'm going to show some pro stock carbs that because NHA wasn't letting us in. They said they were going to let us in at the time they were going to go EFI, but that didn't happen. Here's a set that a customer in Australia wanted his colors. So the main bodies were special size so they could be colored with no problem. But the float balls and the mirroring blocks needed to be stripped and then recolored. That's what he wanted, so we went ahead and did that. They are pretty. This is when NHRA wouldn't accept our carbs. We took quick fuel, we gutted the bottom in the CNC, put a billet plug in the bottom. So you can see that we filled the entire cast part of the thing from the bottom with an aluminum plug. That was a lot of machine work. And then you're going to see that we came in from the top with another aluminum billet plug. So basically the entire center of the carburetor was casting was gutted, and a plug from the bottom and a plug from the top and met in the middle so that we could put in our entire patented process, to reposition venturi, the sizes, tapers, everything that we would normally do in our billet carbs were able to be done in that carb. So now basically they had an NHRA approved carburetor with all the DAM technology in it. And it said quick fuel, because we could get the castings from them, and then I had drawn up the engineering programs. This is what it looked like from the side. You can see the billet hat, which meant the billet plug from the bottom, and I want to tell you that's a lot of work. But in order to get the carburetor to have all of the patented process features that we do, it's what was necessary. And I think these carbs are still racing in Europe in pro stock. And that shows the quick fuel emblem. We used everything DAM, airfoil boosters, the whole thing now was basically a billet carb, and we treated it as such, and all the features. And even when we put in the plug in the bottom, it had the idle and transfer slot that we had done, because we put that in the plug before we installed it in the carburetor housing. So it basically was a DAM billet, in sheep's clothing. And we even used our linkage on it, because we put the throttle shaft, because remember the carburetor wasn't, put the throttle shafts where we would normally run the throttle shafts. So it was quite an engineering project. So the reason why we're doing this, and it's not in any particular order, is to show some of the stuff that we've done over the years that people for sure didn't even know existed. Us modifying, Rasbells with the shear booster, that I can't tell you, when guys get that now, they just can't believe. They get our metering block systems, whether it's inside their metering block or like this, we put our metering blocks on it, put our systems in it. They just cannot believe how much more performance that they're getting. And these are the quick fuels finished. I just wanted to show the different pictures of that. Totally billet on the inside. So if you have a project, you need somebody to go through the engineering and bring it to the most current thing, and there's rules. Well, usually the NHRA says any internal modification, so that this met the rule. Any internal modification was legal. So I'll talk to you. A little added on just before we're finished is our 7000 series carb. It has a 2.5 inch butterfly. The air pan surface is 8 inch in diameter, same as the spread out 7000 series carbs are. You'll notice that this has our 3D printed auxiliary pump arm. These are all been wet flowed and set up already. I just wanted to bring the main body out so people could see it at the end of this particular video to know that it exists. You'll also notice that it does not have a conventional air, the squirters in the hat. It's party line squirter carburetor. This shows the butterflies are 2.5-inch diameter. Right now, it's a 2.5-inch is pretty comfortable in the 7000 series. If we were going to make something with a bigger butterfly, we would actually do a new series carburetor. It could be in the same 8-inch air pan, but we would have to spread out the Venturis just a tiny bit inside of that footprint. And once again, this shows as the 8-inch air pan. You can see there's no squirters. That's our favorite thing now. The new party line squirter is working out just awesome for all the carburetors that have been installed, and any new projects, any new inventory will be upgraded to that. Once again, if you have any questions or need any information, email is info1@dambest.com, phone number 845-546-2646. And once again, I hope you're having a great day, and talk soon. Bye.